Guys, I can't believe I'm still explaining this. I just want to make very clear that this is not a complicated issue. We're not debating the historical complexity of the Israeli state. We're not debating whether or not you support Likud, you support Netanyahu, you support a more leftist government. None of that fucking matters. The arc of history is very clear. From the beginning, Ben Gurion told his soldiers, go out, 18-year-olds, go kill the Palestinians. Go out, you see a classroom full of kids, they raise their hands and surrender, you kill all of them. You see men in a fishing village, you corral them in a cage and you kill all of them. You see girls, you rape them and then you kill all of them. And the rest of them, you push them towards tents in the desert and you make them suffer. You make them either a diaspora or they end up, the more hardy ones, in an open-air concentration camp where one day, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, they will be exterminated. Because the only way we can establish a Jewish ethno-state is by establishing a Jewish majority. And you do that by correcting the population imbalance. How? By eradicating the native majority.
A correspondence between Ben Gurion and his son illuminates this. He said to his son in 1937, the Arabs will have to go, but one needs an opportune moment for making it happen, such as a war.
Overview, how did they do this? Well, Ben Gurion and all of his shitty little comrades
mapped every village, everything about who lived in them, who was rich there, how to attack them best.
In these cities, in these villages, in these towns, people dressed well.
They had banks, they had theaters, they had poets, they had literature, they had pretty much everything.
בתים יפים, גרים כמו אירופאים, אתה יודע, וגם אנשים היו לבושים.
Israel had this plan called Plan D, which explicitly spells out what they plan to do. Look it up.
They knew where the schools were so they could enter, and if the children surrendered, they would kill them all. Ben Gurion's directive was one: get them all, drive them out, kill them all. They knew the ins and outs of the villages and cities, so no one could escape their clutches. They knew where to corral people. They were essentially predators on a hunt.
This ended with 750,000 Palestinians being expelled, 531 villages destroyed, and 11 urban neighborhoods. This was awful for the Palestinians.
Israel was born as the result of a monstrous crime. Israel was born after a monstrous crime. This happened in 1947 and Israel was born in 1948, just as they were getting into the thick of the killing. Leftist, right-wing, settler, crazy, moderated, Bill Clinton, Trump, no one gives a shit. The policy of Israel is the same. Displace the natives and establish an ethno-state for a non-native Jewish people who are convinced they are natives because their book tells them that 3,000 years ago God gifted them this land after they stole it from the Canaanites. Ever since the Sykes-Picot Agreement, ever since the confusion with the Balfour Declaration, when Lord Balfour illegally declared a portion of Palestine as a homeland for the Jews, completely non-specific. He thought it was just a gesture. Turned out to be one of the biggest mistakes ever made in history. The nascent state of Israel got its legs and managed to convince the Europeans because, they looked more like them and they spoke more like them than the Arabs. Again, racism comes into play. The Europeans built up these romanticized ideas of these Jewish soldiers once terribly abused by their European homelands, armed to the teeth and fighting these savage and barbaric Arabs in the midst of the desert. And this romantic idea carried the state of Israel on for a few more decades until the alliances were more cemented and the Americans somehow convinced themselves that this was the only viable democracy in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the Palestinians suffer and eat shit. Their lands slowly are reduced to almost nothing.
The West Bank and Gaza are separated. They're fenced by inhumane cage-like borders. Essentially, the Palestinians are reduced to living in a zoo. In the West Bank, there is apartheid. There are streets where Palestinians cannot walk. They have houses with doors that need to be welded shut because Palestinians are literally not allowed to walk on those streets. Checkpoints are hours long. Daily humiliation is endured. Life is pretty shit.
In Gaza, Palestinians are living in the largest concentration camp in history. It's a war, you say? Uh-huh. Have you ever heard of a war where one side of the war
can turn off the water, the electricity, turn off access to basic amenities, where one side cannot get money without the approval of the other side? Their borders are policed by the force of the other side, where one side is one of the best funded militaries on this planet, with an iron dome funded to the tune of $3 billion by the world's greatest power. And the other side has rocks and janky little rockets that they get from Iran.
Really?
Are you serious with that?
Najiba, the Jews are paranoid. They've been raised on stories of the Holocaust, a singular occurrence, something that could only happen to the Jewish people, one of the most long-suffering people on the planet. Myths emerge that no other tragedy could equal this.
The Roma? Forget about them. The Congolese? Forget about them. Rwanda? We don't talk about them. Our tragedy is singular and needs a singular solution. We deserve an ethno-state. We deserve a safe space of our own. Were people there before us? We don't care. We'll take it. Do we have to kill to do it? We don't care. We'll do it.
You understand now that that is the myth, the ethos, the raison d'être of Israel. That, fundamentally, is the concept that you are defending. What can you use as a defense? One, God promised it to us. I'm not terribly inclined, nor am I obliged to participate in your religious delusions. So that one's down. Two, the British lords at the time gave it to us. One, the Balfour Declaration was neither specific, and two, it was also meant as a gesture and was not definitive. The Palestinians, three, also protested it vociferously, and they, original natives and deed holders to the land, had reason to do so. Third shit excuse, conquest has always been a part of history and is part of every great civilization. In fact, Najiba, you Arabs have conquered many lands. And I say, okay, if you accept conquest, then you must accept, as we did in Andalusia after 800 years, the possibility of a reconquista.
הרגנו בהם. בלי נקיפת מצפון.
התקפה רבת היקף, הרשות הפלסטינית. להביא אותם לפחד שהכל מתמוטט.
לא פוחדים, צוחקים להם ירו לנו לתוך האישה הזה? אתה לא מפחד מהעולם?
לא יכולים. 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בנו. זה אבסורד.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספר. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי.